Hi, my name is Christopher Smith with Lantern News. Today I'm interviewing Kevin Christensen, who is running for United States House of Representatives for Wyoming's at-large congressional district. We'll be discussing policies he plans on bringing to Washington. Kevin, good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
From the beautiful state of Wyoming. I love it.
Indeed, it is a gorgeous state, and we're very proud of our state.
I've only seen it in pictures, so I don't even really know what I'm talking about. But from what I've seen, I want to know what I'm talking about. I think I do want to get out there sometime. Well, let's see. So, getting into the political stuff here. So, given the economic crisis in regards to lower class Americans and middle class Americans, what are some policies you would support to address this issue?
Well, I think right now you have a lot of hardworking people, certainly in the state of Wyoming, that are doing everything right, but they're struggling to make ends meet.
Mm,
High gasoline prices, groceries are up, particularly healthcare costs are really hurting a lot of younger people. And I think there's a number of things that we have to do nationwide to address that. One thing that really strikes me is that we have a federal government that is driving some of those inflation by our economic policy. And by way of that, I mean we have a federal government that has not had a balanced budget in a number of years. Our federal government is borrowing money to pay just the interest on the national debt, which is soon to go over $40 trillion.
mhm.
And when you have a federal government that can't exercise fiscal responsibility, all that trickles down economically to people at the lowest level. That that lack of accountability that is occurring at the federal level causes us to have higher interest rates. It's causing us to see food, gasoline prices going up. Conflict in Iran is not helping with the price of oil. We're part of a global economy, and even though we can make all of our own oil and gasoline that we need in a domestic market, we're part of a global economy. And those types of international things that are happening, until that stability is achieved in the area, we're going to see higher gasoline prices.
I'm trying to think of a follow up. There was something in there you had said as far as like accountability, just because I haven't really seen any politician put forth any like real ideas. Do you have something in mind to kind of
I
ensure
do.
ensure Congress doesn't go over budget?
Yes, well, I'll give you an example. 49 out of the 50 states in the union have a balanced budget as part of their constitution.
Okay.
States know how to live within their means. If we want the federal government to live within its means, we can't keep putting the same people back in Congress year after year who simply raise the debt ceiling and are borrowing money against our grandkids and their grandkids' money. So we need a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. We need Congress to get their congressionally mandated work done on time. The last time Congress got a budget done on time was 1997.
Oh
And
wow.
who gets to keep a job when the last time you did it right was 1997? We have to have balanced budgets. We need to have that done as a constitutional amendment, just the same way that the states do now. The federal government needs to be accountable to the states. We have to always remember, the states made the federal government. The federal government did not make the states. And the states know how to live within their means. Members of Congress have shown that they can't do that unless they have the same requirement for accountability that the states do. So I feel very strongly that for us to live within our means, we have to make Congress make the hard choices. When they go to Washington, D.C., and you have ideological corners, you have Republicans in one corner, Democrats in another, and right now, you have both sides saying there's no point in even trying to work with the other side because they're evil, they hate America, or whatever it is the ideological rhetoric is. What you need is leadership in Congress. I'm a combat veteran from Iraq. I commanded a large task force, and I learned from having coalition partners as part of my task force that I led. And I learned that's how you win in combat. It's also how you win in government. You can't just stay in your ideological corner. You got to go find people on a specific issue that want to find a solution, want to do what's right for America. The last several Congress sessions we've had have been remarkable for the lack of work that has been accomplished. There's no landmark legislation that anybody can point to that's been accomplished by Congress in a long time.
Mm,
Very few things are being done on a bipartisan basis, and that is poor leadership on both sides for not finding ways to get together on specific issues. You're not going to see everything ideologically the same. But what you can't do is go back to the people that you represent and say, well, we can't get anything done. There's really no point in working with the other side. We as American citizens have to reject that and demand leadership for members of Congress.
yeah, yeah, you're definitely right. There's a lot of partisanship for sure, and then there's a lot of
It's not,
I think in New Hampshire, yeah, I think actually I forget what it was on, but I don't know, about 6 months ago or something. My two representatives, they had done some bipartisan thing, and oh my gosh, they got all kinds of flack for it. I don't, it's like we got to get something done here. It might have actually been to open the government back up, or something to do with immigration, maybe. I forget. But yeah, yeah, they catch a lot of flack if you do work with the other side too. It's tough, and I do think Americans need to do a
you
little
have
bit
to have
better.
courage to do it. You have to have the courage to do it.
Yeah.
And we just came off of the longest government shutdown in history in this Congress.
Yep.
And at the end of it, the only solution was to choose not to deal with the issue that caused the government shutdown, exclude that, and then move on. That was the best our Congress could come up with. And it's poor governance. Every single state in the union lost permanent money economically as a result of a 43-day government shutdown. We, as American citizens, have to hold our representatives and senators accountable and say, no, you don't go on recess until you get your work done. You don't get paid until government federal workers get paid. You don't vote yourself raises. You get the same raise that you voted in for the average federal government worker. No special perks. It's public service. Go to Washington, D.C. and get your job done.
And I like what I did like that idea with the constitutional amendment to stay within the budget. I think that's sensible. I didn't know that about a lot of state constitutions. I haven't read mine very thoroughly. I should get on that. The next question, though, given the health crisis in America, especially regarding specific things like for physical and mental health, like the rise in obesity, anxiety, depression, how would you address these issues?
Well, I think there's a number of things to unpack when it comes to healthcare in the United States. We have an access problem for a number of people, and we have an affordability problem. I believe they're two separate issues that we have to address separately. Access, particularly in my state of Wyoming, we're a very, very rural state. Most major cities, in the United States have more population than the entire state of Wyoming. Some of our counties are very rural, and the challenge that we have here is access to health care.
Hmm.
We have a mental health crisis in Wyoming. We have the highest suicide rate in the country,
Oh wow.
and there's isolation, there's social isolation, there's a number of things that come from just access issues that in Wyoming, the way we have to address that is incentivizing and providing economic incentives for medical providers, healthcare providers to not just stay in one location, but to have practices that they can have in a large geographic area. Access is a very, very important issue for us. And the way that we've been able to solve that in the past is with programs that help offset the costs of a provider. We have several providers that, let's say you're in orthopedics, they may be in five different locations every day of the week in order to reach the patients that need that help. So that's
Yeah.
an access problem. The
Hmm.
other problem is an affordability problem. Here's my view on that. When the Affordable Care Act came out, there was this idea that this is universal health care for the people. But it really didn't do that. What it did is it shifted from a provider centric healthcare system, and we put it all in the hands of an insurance company. Insurance companies and pharmacy companies, we put them in the driver's seat and we subsidized with Congress giving subsidies to bring down the cost. Well, here's the weird thing about that. If you walk right today into you're sick and you don't have healthcare coverage and you walk into an emergency room and let's say you've got a broken leg. Healthcare is the only commodity I know of that you can go in and you get a different price for what it takes to fix your broken leg, depending on how you're going to pay for it. So if you are in an insurance network, you're going to pay, or your insurance is going to pay sometimes seven or eight times what the Medicare rate is for fixing your broken leg. If you're a Medicare patient, you're going to come in, they're going to pay at the Medicare rate. If you come in and you're uninsured, most places are going to charge you what probably is close to the actual cost, which might be 75 to 80% of the Medicare rate, discount off of the Medicare rate. That makes no sense to me that you have health care on the cost that depends on how it is that you're going to pay it. So when we put the insurance companies in the driver's seat, they're setting the prices for what reimbursement is going to be. And that that to me, it over empowered insurance companies. We artificially thought this was a good thing when there were subsidies that were offsetting the cost with the Affordable Care Act, and it looked like it was a great deal. But when Congress didn't renew those subsidies, we realized that we were actually having insurance companies charging a very, very high rate for access to healthcare through a provider. There are many people I've met on the campaign trail who've told me, I've done a business case analysis here. It's cheaper for me. If I'm a reasonably healthy person, it's better for me to not have insurance if I don't get it through an employer provided plan. It's cheaper for me to pay a la carte uh, and and just hope that I don't have, something really catastrophic than to be covered by an insurance company that has a deductible that had something that they could afford at, let's say, a $500 deductible. When the subsidies went away, that same level of coverage is now something like a three or a $5,000 deductible. That's not insurance coverage. That's not health care.
Hmm.
And this is what's causing problems. And when you have it too expensive for the average person to have, particularly young people that are just getting started out, and you have access to healthcare issues. We pay more in the United States per capita federally for healthcare that doesn't even cover everybody. There are other countries that are providing universal health care for everybody, and they're doing it at a lower cost. That tells me that we're out of balance. We've put too much, we've weighted it and put it in the hands of the insurance companies. I would put it back where it's a provider-centric healthcare system that we go with, and providers set the costs of what services are going to be, and allow also states. In my state, we don't have a state-run healthcare option that's available to us. So it's basically you're a Medicare, a Medicaid, or you got something out on healthcare.gov, or you got something that came through. uh, your employer provided thing that you could buy into. There's
Mm-hmm.
no other option available for people. And when you shift it back to where it's a provider centric and it's focused on the connection between you and your healthcare provider, I believe we can bring costs down and improve access. We didn't intend for it to be this way when Congress passed the Affordable Care Act. It was probably well intentioned. It's just another example of legislation that was well intended that didn't do what everybody thought it was going to do.
Mm. Kevin, what's your stance on abortion? And there's kind of like two parts to this one because not only is there like the pro life versus the pro choice kind of thing, or maybe there's like a third option I don't know about, but so you got that, but you also have, do we keep it at the state level or do you want to bring it back to the federal level? So what's your stance on abortion?
Well, when I'm out talking with people on the campaign trail, that's one of the most talked about topics and that people feel very passionately about. So I'll give you this in a number of different ways. At a personal level, I am not in favor of abortion as a method of birth control. But I do feel that women need to have the right to have an abortion when there's cases of risk to themselves. If that pregnancy came from incest and rape, if there's something, an abnormality that, that's not going to be a viable child, I feel like you have to be compassionate and considerate of a lot of situations. An absolute, I feel, lacks a lot of compassion and consideration for a lot of the unique situations that people can be in. But in the state of Wyoming, let's look at it from a post Roe v. Wade perspective. So each
Mm-hmm.
state now is working their way through that.
Mm-hmm.
And in Wyoming, we have passed a number of efforts in our state legislature, signed off by the governor, that would outlaw abortions. But Article 1, Section 38 of our Constitution in the state of Wyoming, as interpreted by the Wyoming Supreme Court, has said that abortion is healthcare, and they've overturned these. I support the Constitution of the state of Wyoming. I want my state to make that determination for us to follow the will. That with which, I'll go back to the 10th Amendment to the Constitution in the Bill of Rights, which is essentially that with which is not explicitly spelled out in the US Constitution is reserved for the states and to the people. This is something I feel the states should be able to make that determination based off of what their elected officials in that state want. In my state, that's what we're working through right now, and I fully support the Constitution of the state of Wyoming, and I will do what I can to prevent federal government from coming in and trying to dictate that for the state of Wyoming.
It is a big task at the federal level if you kind of think about it. They're overseeing everyone's like healthcare in that way. But
And we are, as a country, we're not united on this issue. And I have yet to
no,
find
yeah,
anybody who does not already have a strongly view that's often based off of their faith. And I don't want to get between a woman and her healthcare provider. I don't want to get between a person and their faith. So that's why the way that I feel about abortion is evolved from those tenets.
sure. What's your position on age verification for social media apps, operating systems, these sorts of things? Do you know what I'm referring to? This one usually, I don't blame people if this one kind of throws them off. It's basically like I'm pretty sure.
Access to alcohol ads where you got to verify that you're 21, or adult websites
But he,
where states have
yeah,
laws, that sort of
yeah,
thing.
and even now it's kind of it's. I don't want to say it's being more intrusive, but like in a sense, as like it's. I mentioned like operating systems, so I'm pretty sure there's legislation that passed in California that starts January 1st. If you have an operating system. So basically, if you have a device, really,
Mhm.
chances are good. I don't know if it's you just have to do the age verification thing or not. But then lately, with some of this legislation, some of the proposals is like it has to do with minors, and there's also a concern about data collection. So there's a lot of different concerns there. So in kind of an all-encompassing kind of way, that age verification. So yeah, what's your stance on this?
Well, the best method for ensuring that underage people and kids are getting access to only material that they should be getting access to is moms and dads. Moms and dads making sure that their kids and there's tools out there to help people do that, get access to age appropriate material. Moms and dads, in my mind, are at the forefront of any issue. Government efforts to try to be moms and dads and tell us what we can and cannot do, or the kids can and can't have access to. Uh, I I am generally not in favor of those types of things. I would like to see the onus and the responsibility for protecting our kids be at local government levels, local school boards, locally elected officials, our counties and our states, and moms and dads at the forefront of being able to make determinations about what's right for them. Every family is going to have a different set of backgrounds, beliefs, considerations. There are families that wouldn't dare let a kid have a smartphone until they were, you know, 17 years old. Some are given access to kids, full free access to internet for kids that are 8, 9, and 10. That is a parent choice and a parent responsibility, and parents need to be accountable. It's not society's job to raise your kids. It's your job to raise your kids. You set the rules. You set limited access for your kids and how much time they get on the internet, what sites they're allowed to get into. If you don't know what your kids are getting access to, then I feel like you're not fulfilling your responsibility as a parent to be gainfully engaged, meaningfully engaged with what your kids. If you just let uh, social media, we've seen where kids are bullied online. You have to be just as engaged with online issues that your kids are facing as you are with bullying in, the school ground. Uh, More and more young people, their sense of who they are and their presence of how they define themselves is their online presence. It's not as much their physical presence. And we need to be thoughtful of that as parents and make sure that the environment that those kids are in is the environment that we want. When you're 18, you're 21, you're out of the house, go be you and be whoever you are. Moms and dads, if you got kids at home, take an active role. Don't let the federal government or your state government make those decisions for you and say that's their job to determine what my kids have access to include books in schools. If your school board has a list of books that are going to be used for the instruction, and you maybe have issues or concerns with a particular book that would be used, go get engaged in your local community. Go to school board meetings. Find out what they're doing. Be engaged, and let your position be known with those folks.
Federal government spending. So recently, I think you had already touched on this a little bit. 2019, the number I got, so just before COVID, 4.4 trillion is roughly about what we spent. Now, this year, I think the last I looked, we're on track to spend about 7.2 trillion. So it's been a pretty good like spike in spending post COVID, and but yeah, so this is kind of like a two-parter. Do we spend less, the same? Do we spend more? And also, there's kind of a question of like, would you change? Would you like decrease funding in one agency, increase it in another? So yeah, tell me a bit about what would you like to see for federal government spending?
My master's degree, I studied economics and really tried to tackle the issue of it was at a federal government level. And I came to the realization the number, the how much we spend needs to be less. Specifically, it can't be more than what we bring in. That sets the top line. We should have spending be below whatever it is that our treasury brings in every year from all the different sources that the treasury brings in, and use that gap that is between what we spend and what we bring in. My state takes that money that we don't spend and we invest it. We're invested in gold. We're invested in My state is financially solvent and has incredible investments. The federal government needs to spend less and invest that money and pay off the debt. We can't have deficit spending. So for me, the size of it is ultimately driven by how much money. If your GDP, your gross domestic product, and your economy is ripping, you can spend more money. When you're economically at a lower pace, you're gonna have to spend less money. And Congress has to make those tough decisions. And here's the thing I learned in studying this. People always talk about cutting the size of the federal government or cutting federal spending. In the actual federal government budget, we're talking about discretionary spending, and it's a small part of the budget. It's not the big driver of our budget. Non-discretionary spending and all the entitlement spending is where you have to look at that in addition to the discretionary side. You could, and look, I mean, the Trump administration has tried to cut the federal government. They've gutted it, and so many different agencies with efforts to try to push employees out the door. And that still has not reduced our federal government spending. So we need good governance, and we need to have these agencies, and they have to be funded at a reasonable and appropriate level to do whatever it is that is required by law and by the Constitution, and that's it. And we have to look at it at entitlement spending. So I don't target any one particular agency. On the discretionary side of the budget, that's actually not where the big money is at. You have to look at the other things. We also have to fix Social Security. Social Security is going to likely go insolvent in 2033. Every year that Congress waits to tackle Social Security's OASI trust fund, the harder it is to make it solvent. There are people today that are making decisions about their retirement. They're taking money before they would really need to. People are taking money at 62 when they would get a lot more money out of Social Security if they can wait to take that until full retirement age of 70. But when you know that Social Security, if Congress does nothing, is going to go insolvent in 2033, people are taking it early
Mm-hmm.
because they're thinking that the money's going to run out.
Yeah.
And it's causing people to make decisions that they would not probably otherwise make.
Kevin, what's your stance on firearms?
I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I am a firearms owner. I believe that the Constitution makes it clear with the Second Amendment. Uh, I also encourage people who are Second Amendment advocates to read the entire Second Amendment, not just the second half of the Second Amendment that talks about the right to bear arms won't be infringed. The first part talks about actual national defense. And it implies that if you're a gun owner, the reason that we have that right to bear arms and it won't be infringed is that we may be called upon for the defense of our nation. And so I think that people should just remember that with a tremendous right that's granted to us in the Constitution also comes some responsibility along with it. As a retired member of the armed forces, 27 years, and a colonel in the United States Army, I feel strongly that our country has relied on citizens to protect our country throughout our history. While that's more formalized today in the form of the National Guard and Reserve, it's still pretty clear to me that the citizen, the armed citizen, is part of how our nation has been defended throughout our history and probably will be continued to be defended for many years to come. That being said, I recognize that there are some reasonable things that I don't think everybody needs a howitzer in their yard. But I also think that a reasonable approach to managing firearms. All my firearms are federally registered, and I have no concern about people knowing that I am uh, a gun owner. I do it responsibility, and I take the time to teach others who have an interest in wanting to carry, let's say, a pistol, that I will spend time and help them understand the safety and the responsibility that comes along with being a gun owner.
Absolutely. Kevin, are there any other policies that you would like to highlight? Things you're for or against?
Well, part of what I'm running on, you've picked up a strong fiscal accountability message from me, but there's a couple other things I would highlight. One is judicial reform. I feel that when our Constitution was made, and you think back to Alexander Hamilton, famous, of course, from the musical, but the writer of the Federalist Papers, he argued that our judiciary needed to have complete independence from both the executive and the legislative branches of government, and that he argued for life term appointments and that type of thing as a way to ensure that there wouldn't be encroachment into the judicial branch of government. However, I don't think we got that right. I don't think we intended to have judges that over time would become very political and partisan, and in some cases, even political activists from the bench. We have judges today that are legislating from the branch. Part of that is responsibility that Congress loves to pass ambiguous laws. And when no one really understands how to interpret the law, uh, case law gets filled in by judges. And so, a couple things that I'm an advocate for. I believe that we need age limits for federal judges to include members of the Supreme Court. I feel that term limits for federal judges is appropriate. A lifetime appointment in the same job rarely for any human being makes your performance better. So I feel that having a reasonable term limit so that you go in, you serve your country in the judicial branch, and then you go back to being whatever you were, a practicing attorney. You go live just like we want to see, with our president and with, I believe, members of Congress should have term limits too. It's important for people to go live with the things that they've done and go back into the community and to serve. So, term limits and age limits for federal judges. U.S. House of Representatives has a responsibility for monitoring the performance of judges, and we have some federal judges who have who are not ruling on the basis of law. They're ruling on the basis of whether they like or don't like something, and it's become much too political. Judges that are not ruling on the rule of law have to be held accountable for their actions, and that falls on the U.S. House of Representatives to do that. I also believe in jurisdictional reform to our judicial branch, and what that means is if you have an action, and I'll use in the state of Wyoming, if there is a federal government action in the state of Wyoming that you as a special interest group maybe disagree with, today you can go shopping around the country for your favorite judge that you think is going to rule on your behalf. That to me has created this liberal versus a conservative judge. So special interest groups that are, let's say, a liberal group are going to go find their favorite judge. And we have an oil and gas action here in Wyoming that I had worked on that was filed in Washington, D.C., where there is no oil. There's no oil and gas development going on there. Nobody in Washington, D.C. knows anything about the laws and the regulations on permitting and extracting minerals. Wyoming does. They deal with that in the courts every day. That's a huge part of their caseload. But when you go shopping in Washington, D.C., you're trying to find a judge that's going to go, well, I don't want oil and gas development. Let's just kill that. I don't like it. And when you have judges that are ruling on the basis of I like it or I don't like it, and they don't even know the laws or have experience in those laws, I feel that's a disservice to our nation when you have judges that are taking on cases like that. And that holds true. Conservative folks run around to find their favorite conservative judge that will rule in their favor. We got to stop this shopping for your favorite judge. The jurisdictional basis needs to be where is that action actually taking place? And the district court that is in that area needs to be the one that handles it.
I
And I'd say congressional reform is the other one I would hit on. I feel that our country needs term limits for members of Congress. I have signed a pledge to abide by term limits. I believe that there should be 2 terms in the United States Senate and 3 terms in the United States House, and that's it. Then our forefathers, when they served in Congress, they served in the House, then they went on to the Senate, they got cabinet positions, and they served in the executive branch. They went back to their state legislatures and they served there. They went back to the businesses and lived with the things that they did in Congress. And the idea that we have people that have served 40 plus years or more in Congress and that became a career, every single time a politician is running for reelection, they're taking money and they're taking donations from special interest groups. And over time, those groups own that that elected official, completely own. They can walk in and get what they want out of them. That is not how our government was intended to be. We need term limits. We also need members of Congress that are going to uh, agree up front that if they don't get their work done on time, they don't go on recess and they don't take pay. If we have another lapse of appropriations in Congress and federal government workers aren't getting paid, guess what, Congress? You're not getting paid either, and you don't get it in arrears either. Do your job, get it done on time, and focus on serving the American people. We see Congress spending a lot of its time holding hearings on issues that have nothing to do with their congressionally or their constitutionally mandated responsibilities. Do your work first that is in the Constitution, do it well, do it within your means, make the tough decisions, and then you can go do these other things and go take trips and fact-finding missions and all these other things. But members of Congress also need to give up their special perks for healthcare. You live and you get the same health care that every other American. If you think that Affordable Care Act is serving the people of the United States well, guess what? You can get your health care that same way too and see if you still feel that it's a great system. So I feel that we have to have some reform of parts of our federal government. Not only do we need to affect spending controls, but it's time, bottom line, for Congress to earn back the trust of the American people. Congress is not a respected organization that it once was. People really respected members of Congress. Now people roll their eyes. There's getting to almost be this sense of fatalism that nothing's going to change, nothing can happen. Well, that's on us as American citizens because we keep putting back these same people over and over. And we've seen how money and special interest groups and PACs can basically buy a candidate back into office. And it's proven time and time again that you can buy your way into office. That has to stop. It's not healthy for our democracy.
couple quick things I wanted to go back on for judicial reform. Uh, I think you said term limits and age limits for SCOTUS. Do you happen to have numbers in mind?
Well, I think that as a minimum, there should be nobody serving over the age of 80.
Okay.
And we've had to have federal judges in their 90s who were barely able to come to work and do their job that wouldn't leave office. And it took impeachment to get them out of office. So I think 80, I mean, you can make an argument maybe it's a number less than that, but whatever it is, there is a reasonable age that you don't continue to serve. In terms of term limits, I think 20 years of service in the judicial is plenty. That's a full career. I feel like we should have changeover that occurs in we have administrations that keep talking about changing the number of people that are on the Supreme Court because we think it's too far skewed one way or the other.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
that's because they can choose when they go. And if you're a Republican member of the Supreme Court, you wait till a Republican's in office so that the Republican can nominate another person. We just need to set a rotational schedule. You come in, you serve your nation, and if you were appointed by a Democrat, maybe the time will come where a Republican will be in office that will make that determination. Whatever the case is, you can't just have a stagnant group of federal judges that don't change location, stay in the same job as long as they want to, and there's no accountability for their level of performance. Everybody who has a job knows that there's accountability for your performance. And if you don't perform and you don't do your job well, you have to be more easily dealt with uh, than the way it was set up. It was well intentioned when it was set up, but I think we've seen that over time it has evolved into something not that.
Kevin, where can people find you? Website, social media?
Well, the best place to find me is at my website for my campaign, which is Christensen2026.org. That's Christensen 2026.org.
Yep. And you also got some links on Facebook and LinkedIn here.
I do.
Donations, some policies. Awesome. Well, Kevin.
Find out everything you want to know about me on there, and I'm also reachable. People can reach out every day. I'm answering direct questions from people who email me, and I'm absolutely glad to engage in dialogue with everybody who has an interest.
Yep. Your email's right there at the bottom as well. Yep. All right, Kevin. That's all I've got for you.
Thanks, Chris.
It's been good. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks. Take care.